Welcome to Wicked, a true crime podcast. I'm Tiffany, I'm your host, and welcome to the first video on this channel. I'm so excited to have you here. For those of you who don't know, I actually have another podcast called Sinister, and that one focuses on children cases and minority cases. I'm really passionate about talking about true crime when it's people that are so overlooked or aren't fairly treated in the criminal justice system. Those are the cases that I focus on. And my goal with Wicked is slightly different. We're going to be talking about older cases. So around the 2005, 2006 era and back towards the 50s, 60s, 70s, and all of that. So we're going to be talking about more vintage cases because those also don't have a whole lot of information. Those also don't have a whole lot of media coverage, whether it's shoddy police work, shoddy media coverage, or the forensics just wasn't good enough and there was no progress ever made. For one reason or another, they didn't get a whole lot of light, and that's what we're going to be talking about on this channel. And for this first case, we're going to be talking about a woman named Nicole Parsons Bucki. And there's not a whole lot of information out there on this case, not a whole lot of articles, but the ones that I did use will be linked down below from my research. I encourage you to go and check them out, to do your own research, to learn more about Nicole yourself. But I want to go ahead and start talking about this case. So like I said, I couldn't find too much on Nicole, but this case is definitely heartbreaking. Her 2001 murder was staged as a suicide, and some believe the events of 9/11, the day she was killed, was overshadowed her case. 9/11, and for the days in the aftermath, the news was full of the fall of the Twin Towers. This horrific event that occurred in United States history, a really dark day for a lot of people, but for this one family, this day was dark for another reason. And some people believe that the events of 9/11, this is what caused her case, or not the events of 9/11, the news coverage of 9/11 is what caused her case to be buried under the countless headlines about the attacks. Because even as a child, I was very young when this occurred. I think I was, 4. And I just remember, even as that young, just day after day, countless news stories about the attacks. And I don't know how long they went on. I just remember that's all I saw for the days after. So I think it's very plausible that it did get overshadowed, and that is why I want to talk about her case today. So her murder occurred on 9/11/2001, and over 20 years later, her killer still has not been brought to justice. Nicole was a young mom, a daughter, and a wonderful friend. She is described as having a $1 million smile, and she is so beautiful. There's not very many photos of her out there, but in all of them, she just has this most radiant smile. Like, she is just absolutely gorgeous. And a quote from her mother, Robin. Robin says, "I want people to know that she made a difference in the world, and she had friends and family who loved her dearly." End quote. At the time, Nicole was living in Providence, Rhode Island in September of 2001. 72 hours before her death, she was seen arguing with her ex-boyfriend, and this ex-boyfriend, I could not find a name for him, only that he was called a juvenile at the time, and I don't know what that means. So I don't know his age, I don't know his name. She had bruises all over her and was allegedly dragged from her apartment building and locked out of her apartment. In the days following, some of her neighbors would see the ex-boyfriend outside her apartment demanding to be let in to get his belongings. She did not let him in, and the cops were eventually called, and a no-verbal contact order was filled. The neighbors would see the ex-boyfriend within hours of the murder trying to gain access to her apartment. Just after midnight on 9/11, 2 of her neighbors would gain access to her apartment, and I'm not sure why. I don't know if maybe they were just worried about her from what they've seen, or maybe they just hadn't seen her in a while. But regardless of the reason why, they did gain access to her apartment, and they discovered her body. The police were immediately called, And her death was initially thought to be a suicide because she was found in her bathtub fully clothed with a hairdryer connected to a nearby extension cord. But her case would be ruled a homicide, and this is because her autopsy would come back and it was discovered that Nicole had water in her nasal cavity, had signs of strangulation, and her pancreas was hemorrhaged by blunt force trauma, and there was absolutely no signs whatsoever of electrocution. And the most chilling part of all for me was that the boyfriend's nickname, Huggy, would also be crudely and freshly tattooed on her body. That gave me chills when I read that part. And we actually have a quote from this unnamed boyfriend, and he says, "I loved Nikki just as much as anyone else, if not more. I've talked to so many investigators, took multiple DNA tests, there's nothing much I can do at this point." End quote. And he was talking about his innocence at that point. A detective connected to the case wouldn't say if the boyfriend was ever ruled out as a suspect, but did admit that the investigators lost some of the evidence connected to the case. They lost it. And this detective, Detective Lapatin, I believe is his name, he says, even though we have our thoughts and our ideas, we have to have proof. And whether or not that evidence would have given us the proof, you don't know. End quote. And another quote from Robin, she says, "When I pulled into the driveway, I saw detectives, unmarked cars, and you just get a bad feeling in your stomach. It's intuition. At the moment the Twin Towers were being hit by the jet, the policemen were telling me that my daughter had been killed. She was dead, and I just started to scream out her name." End quote. Robin also says in her heart that she knows who did this to Nicole, and she hopes to finally get justice, not just for her own sake, but for Nicole's daughter, who was only 8 at the time and now has her own daughter. So Nicole would have a grandchild if she was still around today. And that is just so heartbreaking to think about. This little 8-year-old girl had to grow up without her mother. Knowing what happened to her mother, I can't imagine the trauma that that child had to go through, as well as the mom. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine that at all. Nicole's family continues to advocate for her, and they continue to ask the public for help and to come forward with details that can help solve her case. Robin still holds vigils every single year on 9/11 to honor her daughter. She also created the Justice for Nicole Facebook page and teamed up with Lauren Malloy, whose organization, Unsolved RI, or Unsolved Rhode Island, is offering a $1,000 reward for anybody who has information that will lead to the arrest in this case. And to end off this video is another quote from Robin. If I can help one young lady get out before things like this do happen, then a piece of my heart has got a little more then a little piece of my heart has got a little more of a feel to it, because I helped someone in Nicole's name by letting her story be known. After 20 years, her story deserves to be told." End quote. Anybody with any information is encouraged to contact the police at the Providence, Rhode Island Police Department phone number. And that is what I have for you guys on Nicole Parsons Bucki. A super heartbreaking case all around. This mother who lost her daughter in a savage way, and she said she knows in her heart who did it. I think we all have an idea who did it. I think that tattoo marked on her daughter's body, I think that was the calling card. I think it was the boyfriend. I don't care how much he claims his innocence. I know, innocent till proven guilty, but the signs are there, and I'm so disgusted that the police lost the evidence in this case, the evidence that could have connected him to her murder, that could have sent him behind bars. They lost crucial evidence, and I am just absolutely disgusted. That is shoddy police work. Nicole deserved better. Her family deserved better. And I know people don't like it when I cuss on Sinister, so I try to limit it. But I feel like the ex-boyfriend is just an absolute piece of shit. And I think we all know who it is. Allegedly, I don't want to get in trouble, but I think we all know who it is as well. That being said, my heart goes out to Robin and the rest of her family, her daughter, her grandchild, that will never know her grandmother. I just hope that they will eventually get the justice they deserve, the peace they deserve, and I hope that one day they can permanently move on from this and help people that are also in Nicole's position to just get out of it. It breaks my heart what Nicole was going through, especially in the days leading up to what happened to her. It's horrifying. And my heart broke when I was reading this case. But thank you guys so much for listening to Nicole's story. Like I said, all the links I used for research will be down below, like always, and I will see you guys very soon. Thank you so much for tuning in, to the first ever episode of Wicked. Bye, guys.